In this video, we will be going through the process of creating and initializing a Haskell project. And in order to do so, for the first time in this series of videos, we will be going to use cabal, and let me switch to a proper shell since I feel more comfortable. And in order to initialize a cabal project, we usually want to do this operation at the beginning. Therefore, we will start by an empty folder, and as said before, we will need cabal, which we installed in the first video of this playlist. And cabal can do quite some things, but we are only interested in the init command, since as we can read here, cabal init creates a new .cabal package file, and we'll get to what a .cabal file is. For the moment, let's just start creating our project, and we will not only use the cabal init as is, since as we see we have some options available, and running cabal init as is, at least to my default options, will run the non-interactive way, which just automatically creates a project with some default values. In our case, we want to use the interactive mode so that we will have some control on the high level process of creating this project. Therefore, we'll run cabal init interactive or just cabal init -e for short. And well, we see that this starts the process. And if we now just answer yes to the question of generating a project with sensible defaults, the generated output will be the same of the non-interactive. So here the answer is no, and here starts the real process. So the first question is whether we want to build an executable, a library, or both. In order to set up our project, also to explain what modules are, we'll go for both the library and the executable. Here is asking where the main should be, and the main.hs is fine for us. Also, the default version of cabal is okay. In order to manage the packages, package name default okay, version okay, license for the moment will be none, since the options we are creating now can always be modified. Author name me, also the email, the project on page none for the moment, and then it asks for the category, and those are some known categories for which you may want to create a library for. In our case, is none of those. Then here we are just setting up the project structure, and is asking where the main.hs, which we created here, should be located. The app folder is fine for us. It's asking the same for the library, which we asked here to create, and the source folder is fine also. We do not require any test with at the moment. Then it asks for the base language. Last version of Haskell is okay. And the main reason for which we run this whole process is to answer yes to this question, which is asking whether you should add informative comments to each field in the cabal file, and we'll need those comments in order to have a better understanding of what is going on there. And that's it. This created a bunch of files as specified during this process. So now that we have the project created, we'll see that the Haskell extension, when we go as an example in our main, will get mad for a bunch of reasons, will give us some suggestion that may not be totally appropriate, and this is because the way the project is structured should be reflected in the Haskell files. And a quick way to resolve all these problems is just to close VS Code, and here is the base directory in which we were before. In order to solve the problem, we have to start VS Code from the directory in which we have the .cabal file that, as we'll see in a moment, is giving an high-level explanation on what is in our project, and that is also the reason on why we got all those errors that weren't really errors. So by going here, which is supposed to be the base directory of our freshly created project, we just type code with a dot, which is supposed to be the path. In this case, the working directory is what does for us. Now we'll see that we have no more error with our main file, and we'll get to this when we'll explain modules. for the rest of this video, we will focus on how projects are handled, and in order to do so, we will focus on the .cabal file. So now that we got our hands on the .cabal file, we see that here we have a cabal version, which is the one chosen while creating the project. The cabal name has been taken from the base folder name. Then here there is a lot of metadata. The important stuff is here, and we'll start analyzing this library section. First of all, we see an exposed modules field with, well, this is just a default library generated with the project, but essentially, since our library could be used by more than one user, here we should specify the modules that we define in our library that every user is free to use, whereas as we see here, there is this field which is called other modules, which, as we can read here, is supposed to contain a list of modules that are specified in the library we are giving the metadata of, but are not supposed to be exposed, and you can consider those modules, therefore also the code specified in those modules, to be kind of private to the library. Then we have an other extension field, which we saw that we can specify some language extensions, and we saw that when talking about bank patterns. Here we specified the bank patterns language extension. In fact, in the case the project we are creating is supposed to use, say, a lot of bank patterns in many files, rather than specifying that extension on each file, we can just specify the bank pattern extension here, and suddenly every file in the project, well, in the library, is free to use the bank patterns. Then we have the build depends, and we'll get to this in a few moments. And here we see the HS source dirs, and here we should specify a list of directories which will contain the sources of the library in this case, and this field is used by Cabal in order to know where to search for the modules that are meant to be present in the library implementation. And in order to show you how this field is supposed to be used, say we have another folder which contains some modules. We see already here that we got an error here, even if this code is totally valid Haskell code, and if we try to use the code we define in that module, we'll get an error also where we try to use that code, seeing that there is no such code available. And this is because, well, we didn't specify any of this new code inside our .cabal file, which is supposed to do exactly this. So here I am adding just the new directory in which the new module is present, and I have also to specify the sum module that we define here. And in order to do that, say this is supposed to be a private module, we could also add the new module under the other modules field, and we see now that we have no more errors when trying to use the module, and no error when compiling the code defined here. So this is how you use the Haskell source dirs, and then we have the default language, which is the one we chose while using the cabal init command. Then we encounter the executable section, followed by a cabal proj, and this is supposed to be the name of the executable. And I want to make you notice that we didn't need any name for the library, and this is because every project in Haskell may only have one library, but it may export more than one executable. And I'll show you this. I can just copy and paste this once again here and just change the name, and this is a different executable. So this project, as written here, exports two executables, but of course for the moment we don't need that. And under the executable section we find the main is, and we specify which file is supposed to be the main of the executable. And remember that the main has to contain a main of which type is an IO action. Then we have, well, once again the build depends, but we see that we have a new line here, and we'll get this. Then here we have the Haskell sources dears as in the library case, and the default language is once again Haskell 2010. Now I can tell you that the build depends is specifying any possible library that here the library or here the executable is depending in order to let code work. And the base library here that we see in both build depends is just the base library for Haskell, which contains all the IO, monad, whatever we saw until now. And then we see that the executable also depends from a library that is called a cabal proj, which happens to be the same name of our project. And that is because this library, that as we saw before, doesn't need any name. This is true because, as we also said before, we can only export one library per project, and since we are sure that this library is unique to the project, it automatically gets the name of the project, and that is what this acabal proj library is the library we ourselves defined. Now, we saw very quickly how build depends is supposed to be used. Is just a list of libraries that we are using in our code, but this separation between a library and an executable allows, first of all, to have cleaner and more organized code. And in fact, the organization of the code is something peculiar of Haskell. In fact, as we also said at the beginning of the video, the modules have to respect the code base structure, and we saw that because we were having problems with the suggestion of the Haskell extension. So, for the moment, it should be enough to know that under the build depends, we have a bunch of libraries, but we'll see how to organize the libraries or executables in modules so that we can more easily maintain our code base. In any case, for this video is all. I want to thank you for your time. Remember to stay decentralized, and I will see you in another video. Bye bye.